The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Classcraft. We're so excited to announce Classcraft's new story mode, which makes it easy for educators to harness the power of stories. But that's not all. Have you ever wanted to see yourself as a character in a story? Now teachers and students can create their custom game avatars and see them come to life on an augmented reality poster. To learn more about Classcraft's story mode and the new AR experience, simply visit classcraft.com.
I guess a lot of people talk about us preparing kids for jobs that don't exist, but haven't we always done that? Yeah. So there's always these jobs that are not going to exist.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We are thrilled to have author and educator Amanda Fox on today with us. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you. I have Maggie the dog here with me too, so she might put in her 2 cents occasionally.
That's exciting. Exciting. We've had dogs occasionally. So before we get started, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background in education, and kind of what brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So I've been in education for the last 10 years. I started teaching actually at the school that I went to. I taught ELA, and I moved into the STEM Academy in Savannah, Georgia, which was a STEM school that focused on learning through technology, and I worked there for, I think, 3 years. I helped build the school from the bottom up, and by building, I mean moving desks and painting walls and all of that.
Nice.
I came to Kentucky in 2016, and coming from the STEM school, I recognized like a lack of integration of STEM and STEAM here. So I started Steampunks EDU, and I went from one school to about 12 schools in 2 years. And yeah, so video game design, augmented virtual reality, all this stuff is kind of what I've taught. And this past year, I've also released 2 books, Teaching Land, which has a fun zombie theme survival guide for new teachers, but also there's some valid stuff in there for experienced educators as well. And then Zombie, a design thinker. So
Awesome. And we're going to talk about both of those books because they're both pretty great. So when it comes to learning, I think that there's a huge difference between a teacher who, tells a student something, stand in front of the class, talk to them, explain something to them, and then ask them to remember it and then, regurgitate it in a standardized test or whatever. And when a student learns something for themselves, like with their hands or by doing things, by making and creating, and that's what I think I like the most about your book, the Zombie, a design thinker. It's written for kids. It's not necessarily, it's not an adult's book. It's written for kids to read. And so we have a lot of books for educators on how to teach design thinking. There's tons of those. But this is a book for kids. Maybe speak a bit to the importance of coming at it from a kid's perspective.
Okay, so you're exactly right. There are tons of books on design thinking for educators, and by writing this kids book, I wanted to basically break down this abstract concept that's hard for littles to get. And that's exactly why I wrote Zombie, a design thinker. It essentially takes a little zombie named Zip who's trying to change his narrative. He's this cute little zombie, and he wants to change his story from being perceived as an antagonist and go to being the hero of the story. And he achieves this through teaching kids the modes of design thinking to solve real problems. So in the book, there's this empathy machine that's created, and I wrote the book in a way that scaffolds teachers, not just teachers, but students, to stop and think about a problem and basically go through the modes. And once a mode is introduced, they're prompted to hand it over to Zip's empathy machine. And in turn, he becomes less and less green. And as they become design thinking superheroes, he becomes human. So nice. There's some irony there that a little zombie has his humanity restored through teaching human-centered design, when in fact at the beginning of the story he's not. So, but this lovable little character comes along and it kind of teaches empathy, which is a really hard concept for littles to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you and I both talk a lot about the future of kids. I notice it's a trend in the things that you write and talk about, and I do it all the time too. In a lot of my talks, I talk about like space and space travel and how like our kids are going to be like, we're teaching the generation of students that might live on Mars. Like we're literally right in that wheelhouse right now. And I talk about, in one of my other sessions I talk about like, we created all of these problems for kids like that are going to now have to deal with like there being no clean water and lack of oil and all of this other stuff. We did that to them and the environment and everything, and they're going to be the ones solving all of these problems that we and the generations before us have created. And you talk to kids all the time. I've seen you tweet about doing video sessions with classrooms and stuff like that, which is really, really cool. And I'm curious how you frame their future to them, especially in the context of how important it is for them to become the problem solvers we need them to become, because, you know, this world isn't, you know, in the best shape that it's ever been right now.
So I guess a lot of people talk about us preparing kids for jobs that don't exist, but
Sure,
haven't we always done that? Or yeah. So there's always these jobs that are not going to exist. I don't think we need to be preparing them for any specific job. So in the past, I've talked to them about the 14 grand challenges that we face in the 21st century, as outlined by the NAE, or the National Academy of Engineers, and this includes advancing personalized learning, cybersecurity, enhancing virtual reality, reverse engineering the human brain. These are just a couple of examples of the 14. So at the STEM Academy in Savannah, where I taught film and digital media, my colleagues and we came up with a school-wide curriculum, and each 9 weeks it incorporated a grand challenge that we kind of wove in through storytelling into our curriculum through this grand story-centered, problem-based narrative around Planet Nevermore, because we were the Ravens. And so we looked first semester at, restoring and improving urban infrastructure. 8th grade was Georgia history, so starting a colony on Mars. And there was like this trinity, or this trilogy of a story that they went through from 6th to 8th grade. So in my class, we addressed these topics with documentaries and condensing what would have been a research or a white paper into a 2 or 3 minute video. But The point is that whether or not you're solving these problems as someone who codes, has a chemistry background, we didn't teach in silos. We taught problems, and we taught it. We connected it through all of the classes. The point is, it takes a diverse team of skilled individuals and their multiple perspectives. And tools and processes like design thinking are important to teach because they transfer from school to the workforce. So no matter what they decide to do in life or what problems they're solving, design thinking and the essential skills that come with that, being able to communicate, collaborate, and think critically, are what I focus on. Those.
Awesome. I think the key is to not, we don't want to scare them, right? I talk to kids about the future all the time, too. And I mean, you have kids, and I have kids, and we don't want to scare them. You don't want to terrify these kids. You don't want them to be like, oh my God, what did you get me into? Literally. But, we do need, in a world where everything has been given to kids pretty easily now, including information and learning, is easier than it's ever been in terms of actually finding out rote knowledge. We still need to prepare kids for a future that's uncertain and a future that has a lot of things that are going to need to be solved, right?
Absolutely. Resilient kids who are able to apply what's easily found. So.
Right, exactly.
OnEducation is brought to you by Taylor Ed. As teachers, meeting the needs of each and every student in today's classroom is time-consuming, complicated, and overwhelming. Taylor Ed makes differentiation in math effortless through curated resources, smart student grouping, and student insights beyond proficiency. Sign up today using the promo code OnEducation and receive 3 months on us. Visit taylor-ed.com for more information. OnEducation is brought to you by Pick My Kid. Pick My Kid is an automated dismissal solution that cuts car line time in half. It engages parents with the Parent app by being able to change dismissal routines right from their phone. Friends, that means no more front office calls. Pick My Kid is affordable for schools and removes dismissal stress for parents, teachers, and staff. For more information, visit pickmykid.com. That's P-I-K, mykid.com.
So we've talked a lot about AR and VR, and you are a big proponent of both. And you even have AR in your book, which is very, very cool. And I'd love to know what your story is when it comes to your connection to AR, VR, what drew you to it. Because one thing that I've noticed or realized is a lot of people's first experience with AR, when they realize that this could be something amazing in the classroom, is always a really good story. Mine was anyways. And explain maybe a little bit about how you use it in your books as well. So talk about your first experience with AR, what got you into it, and then how you actually use it in your books, because I think that that's a really cool story as well.
So my first experience with AR, or it was definitely AR, was with Erasmus. So in 2013, before I was teaching digital media, I was teaching history. So we did this Holocaust project where they had to create this. We did this big memorial wall or walk in the hallway, and my students picked either a victim or survivor of the Holocaust, and in 5 images they had to basically set up the context that allowed the Holocaust to happen, and then 4 images that told the personal narrative within the larger context. And they had to prepare this, 1-minute dialogue for each image, and then Peter Pan it, that's what I call it. We're sewing the digital content onto his, like Shadow and Tinkerbell. So with Erasmus, and so the students created this memorial wall, and then the parents would come in, they'd grab a device and they'd scan all the student work, and they'd get to learn about the stories of the victims and survivors, and the last image would kind of let them know what happened to them, what was their story, did they come out of it. And I thought it was very powerful because students had to take on the persona of this person and tell this person's story, and they weren't writing it out. They had to internalize it, memorize it, and make it into a video. So when you scanned it, the video would pop up, and maybe it wasn't them talking. Maybe they created a trailer or something in iMovie at the time. And for me, it was just like, wow, like I can unlock any digital content and attach any kind of digital content to physical, pieces of paper. Or so for me, that was, it's not like a, oh, wow moment, but it was the beginning. It was the introduction. And when I moved to Kentucky, I kept exploring it like a little further. I was trying to figure out how to get AR and VR integrated easily for teachers. Like how do we, unlock this and disseminate it everywhere? And CoSpaces did that for me. So I know I was looking at a program called Wonder, and it was I didn't really understand how we were going to use that. And then I was like, man, it would be great if we could do this, and then CoSpaces popped up. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I was looking for. That's what I wanted. Yeah, yeah. So and then from there, just the Oculus Go and the virtual reality podcasts, Metaverse, just has kind of been one of my focuses has been AR and VR in education. I've keynoted on it all over the world. So it's something I'm passionate about, and like you said, I've integrated it into my books. So one thing I wanted to do with the integration into the book is have the way I was using it leveraging good pedagogy, not just in a fad way. A lot of times it's oh, okay, cool, you can scan this and ooh, this pops up. But I wanted what popped up to add to the book, to enhance it, versus it's just being, oh, this is a cool thing that that pops up. So there's 4 ways that I did that. The first is I used Thing, THYNG, and that app is kind of like Erasmus in the sense that you can you can layer content on top of things. So I use the Thing Out app to be the coach. It's the book's coach for Teaching Land. So my avatar, Savannah, because most of my teaching career was in Savannah. The nickname we go by the alias is like Zombieland, which Zombieland 2 is about to drop in October. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited. But my avatar pops up at the beginning of each chapter and just kind of summarizes what the learning objectives are, like what you're going to be reading and what to look out for, and to go ahead and start thinking about different concepts or things.
Sure.
Then at the end of the chapter, I use Metaverse. There's a QR code, and it is kind of a formative assessment, or it makes the reader apply what they've just read. So then there is Artivive, which is the hook. It makes all the beginning of each chapter graphic come to life. So
nice.
So with the character animation, I use Adobe character animator, and that was a lot of fun, like learning how to do that and rig characters and make them come to life. And then, so those are the main ways I've used it. Erasmus or HP Reveal. It's in there. I use that to collect multiple perspectives from different educators around the world and they've made like 1 or 2 minute videos, and those are kind of scattered throughout the book as well. Awesome. To just, have other people talking about the content.
We have, it's funny, we have people who listen to the show and then document it or take notes for professional development for like grad credit and stuff like that. So like Amanda just dropped like 6 or 7 different AR tools there. So hopefully everyone was paying attention to that little lesson in VR tools or AR tools, because that was a lot of cool stuff there. I'm gonna take a look at those as well. We'll put some of them in the show notes too. That might be helpful. So finally, we're about to host a roundtable discussion in a few weeks on the podcast, featuring a few teachers who are about to go into their second year in the classroom. And Glenn and I talk a lot on the podcast about first year teaching, about how kind of just hard it is. My first year was brutal. It was the worst. It was not easy at all. I know you have some thoughts on the first year experience. It's your Teaching Land book has some stuff related to this. So let's start with this. What do you think the biggest difference is between a teacher getting started? Let's say someone's getting started in the next few weeks. School in the U.S. is starting to roll back in the next little while. In Canada, we start September 4th. There are a lot of teachers that are going to be walking into the classroom for the first time, or at least the first time as their full-time, like that this is their everyday class kind of thing. What do you think the biggest difference is between a teacher getting started here now and someone's first day of teaching, let's say 10 years ago? And how do you think that first year has changed? Do you think it's harder now, or do you think it's easier?
I don't think it's gotten any easier. Walking in, whether 10 years ago, it was actually when I walked into my first classroom. So, so 10 years ago versus now, I think the accountability and the stakes have changed. I think we're responsible for a lot more stuff, and I mean, just the technology that's rolled out that we're responsible for learning and integrating. But in that 10 years, I think when I first started teaching, I had the teachers in my building. That was pretty much it. If you were teaching music or film or related arts, you were kind of an island. I was teaching ELA, so I had my team. So, which it's easy to talk policies, classroom management, and universal concepts, but you don't have a content person if you're like that one person. Or with me, I was partnered with actually the person who taught me when I was in when I was in school. She was my teacher.
World, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So our teaching styles were different. So I couldn't go to her for technology because she didn't want to use it. But she was really strong in classroom management and the content. So in that aspect, we made a really good team. Because I was coming fresh out of college with the tech concepts, but one of the big differences then versus now is Twitter. I think Twitter is huge. So it wasn't my first year of teaching, but my first year of teaching film, Twitter was around versus my first year of teaching, and like I wasn't really on the Twitter. So I reached out to Don Wettrick, Don Goebel, and Michael Hernandez when I was starting my film classroom because I looked online and I was like, these are the trinity of film teachers. And,
Sure
they were three individuals who were kings of content in that area.
Yep.
And they'd been doing it, speaking on it, and they were what I aspired to be. So in the context of easier or harder, there are always those first year things you have to figure out. But get on Twitter, put yourself out there, find your teaching god or goddess that you want to be like, or that you want to learn from. Find your mentor, find your PLN. It doesn't have to be one person. And it's easier. I would say in that aspect, it's easier because we get to crowdsource from the best in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing opportunity now on Twitter just to find your tribe, so to speak, and find the people that resonate with you, that you think you could learn from, and to follow them and pay attention to what you're doing. I think Twitter has made a big difference. I also when I was writing this question, I was thinking about it for me as well, and just some conversations that have come up, and just thinking about something like SEL, like 10 years ago, did we even know what social emotional learning was, or it wasn't something you talked about a lot, but now teachers are almost responsible for kids' emotional states. Maybe we always were, but now it's obvious. Like social emotional learning is a big part of an educator's job in the classroom. And so now not only do you have to be an expert at, language, if that's what you teach, or whatever your content area is, but you have to also be an expert at classroom management and managing a classroom. You have to be very good with technology, if not an expert. And now you also have to have a pretty strong knowledge of how to handle students' emotions and how they, walk and live and work in the world, and how they deal with all of that. So Teaching Land 2 can't come at a better time, I guess, because there's definitely a lot going on, and we need all the help we can get, I think, as educators, first year or not, managing all of the things that are put on teachers, right?
Absolutely. And that's the premise of the book, actually. We talk about the accountability and the state of over-testing and everything that we're responsible for, and just some educational policies that we outline as the kind of like ground zero. Like this was where this epidemic started, and the virus is just the state of education. And we talk about how there's these teachers who, despite all the red tape, despite the standards and everything that we're supposed to do, the technology, like everything we're supposed to be good at, they're still doing this great job of teaching. And we have some of their stories in the book. So the best thing I think that we can do is look at those who are doing it well and ask them how the heck they do that every day.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not. Don't stop learning, right? Don't stop. Just because you're a teacher now doesn't mean you should stop learning from other people. And like we've said, find your tribe and find those people and reach out to them and learn from each other, because I think that's what will help get you through. That's for sure. So Amanda, tell the folks out there, you've already dropped a bit of a hint on the book, so tell them what's going on in your life. How can people meet you or connect with you out there?
So I am at Amanda Fox STEM on Twitter. I'm Amanda Fox Populi on Instagram. We've got a Teaching Land Facebook page. The website is teachinglandthebook.com. You can find out all the information about the book. We have a bunch of free resources. I'm always posting all the resources from the book. I just posted a big feed on how to reach students in terms of out beyond the classroom, or just, figuring out who they are and building those relationships the first days of school. So
awesome. All right, and we're going to put a bunch of resources, a bunch of ways for you to connect with Amanda in the show notes. Amanda Fox, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glen Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the Education Podcast Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Jennifer Gonzalez, Matt Miller, and many more by visiting edupodcastnetwork.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found at Irv Spanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Classcraft, for supporting us. Check out classcraft.com/oneducation to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.